Very good. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our fall meeting webinar recap. I'm Barb Natterson-Horowitz, and I'm one of the members of the HAA onBOARD initiative, and we're going to start our webinar now.
Great, and to take us through the agenda, I'm Will Makris. Hold on for a second. Give me a next. Thank you. And almost there. Anyway, I'm Will Makris, also one of the team members for HAA onBOARD. I'm a School of Education grad and appointed director from the School of Education, and happy to welcome you. Today, for the agenda, we're going to be going through comprehensive pieces to help you understand how to make the most of your 3 years with us as an HAA board member. We'll do an in-depth overview of the Harvard Alumni Association, our mission, our strategies, our intent. We'll then go through your specific roles. What do we do? Who is it that you're going to be doing this with? And what are some of your particular roles? And each of us will step you through each of those components. We'll then go through an overview of the Harvard Alumni Association staff and our responsibilities in helping guide you during this important time of volunteering. And then we'll do a recap as we finish on. So with that, I'm happy to hand over to Siri.
Thank you, Will, and welcome again, everyone. My name is Siri Otila, and I'm the third initiative leader for the HAA onBOARD initiative. So let's dive right in and talk a little bit about the Harvard Alumni Association as a whole. Our purpose is to advance the endeavors of Harvard University, to foster mutually beneficial relationships among Harvard University, its alumni and students, and to strengthen the common bond among Harvard University's alumni. So that is the purpose of the entire Harvard Alumni Association, which of course consists of every degree holder of Harvard University from all its schools, as well as faculty. Our job at the HAA is to maintain and enhance a highly engaged and vibrant community of alumni and friends worldwide. We do that in many ways, both in person and virtual, and some of the ways in which we foster this community include our Harvard clubs around the world, continuing education programs, various online services, including online continuing education, as well as various different types of alumni and current student events all around the world. The HAA is over 177 years old, and today we have over 195 Harvard clubs all around the world. We also are the host organization for 52 shared interest groups, which are virtual communities of alumni who come together around specific areas of interest, including things like women's empowerment and global development. The HAA has a unique role in Harvard's overall administration. We are a part of the Alumni Affairs and Development Cluster. So the Harvard Alumni Association reports up to the University Vice President of Alumni Affairs and Development. And of course, that Vice President has a direct line to the President of the entire university. But we also have a somewhat unique role in higher education in that we as alumni and as the Harvard Alumni Association nominate the candidates for direct candidates for the Board of Overseers, which is one of two governing boards that Harvard has in addition to the Harvard Corporation. So you might be familiar with the ballots that come to you each spring where you as a member of the Alumni Association get to vote for candidates for the Board of Overseers. So as the HAA, one of our most important roles is selecting that slate of candidates. So that's the Harvard Alumni Association as a whole. Now let's turn our attention to the Board of Directors specifically that you are a part of. And we'll begin with what it is that we do and are as the HAA Board of Directors. Our mission is to foster alumni community building and to create university citizens of our alumni volunteers and alumni broadly. That involves things like developing and strengthening engagement programs, events, virtual programs, to establish stronger connections between alumni themselves and between alumni and Harvard as a school. For example, during our board meetings, we host a town hall meeting where us as the board members get to ask questions of the executive director of the Harvard Alumni Association and also visiting leaders from across the university to make sure that we are up to speed on the latest university news and what's going on. We also host events like Insta Harvard and Welcome to Your City. Those two events happen to be geared towards some of our most recent graduates that welcome them into their new geographical communities. As I just mentioned, we also select the slates for candidates for the Board of Overseers as well as elected directors for the Harvard Alumni Association. The Harvard Alumni Association Board is responsible for organizing the afternoon program each year on Commencement Day in May. And that's, of course, when we welcome all the graduating students as official members of the Harvard Alumni Association. And lastly, we are involved in shaping the future of online learning and delivering programming of online learning for Harvard alumni. These are just some examples of the many, many different things that we do. And as a board member, we want to remind you that several times a year you get a letter from Philip Lovejoy, the Executive Director of the Alumni Association, that outlines all the activities that the Harvard Alumni Association has undertaken in the last couple of months. We typically get that letter 3 times a year. And that is a full accounting of all the different activities that the HAA is involved with. So if you want more detail on what we do, we highly recommend that you read that letter in detail. As the Harvard Alumni Association Board, we have a dual role in serving both the university as a whole and also specifically college alumni. The Harvard Alumni Association is simultaneously the Alumni Association for the college, but also the umbrella Alumni Association for all the different schools. As the HAA Board, we have a university-wide role, and we, of course, comprise of the executive committee and then members in various different categories: directors, committee chairs, initiative leaders, and committee members. We'll go through all of that in greater detail in a moment. We oversee a network of 300,000 alumni, more than 300,000 alumni, and over 14,000 volunteers across the globe. The board itself in the year 2017-18 is comprised of 359 alumni volunteers. We represent the college as well as all the graduate and professional schools. We also have representatives from various Harvard clubs and shared interest groups around the world, as well as folks who are involved in alumni interviewing and various other alumni activities. We have 13 people on our executive committee. 32 of us serve as leaders for initiatives and committees. Another 135 of us serve in a director role, and we also have 207 committee members. And here you can see how many of us are new this year as members of the onBOARD initiative. The directors break down by school. We have college directors, graduate school directors, elected directors, and that's the folks that you elect every spring, 6 people each spring. We have directors for clubs and shared interest groups. Any living past president of the Harvard Alumni Association automatically becomes a past president director. We have 3 ex officio directors. Those are the president of the Harvard Magazine, as well as the 2 directors of the Harvard College Fund. And then lastly, we have 1 director who represents the Association of Harvard College Class Secretaries and Treasurers Association. Here's who we are this year. We are roughly 50-50 split women and men on the board. We range in age from 18, that's some of our current undergraduate members, all the way up to late 80s or even early 90s. We have a lot of college degree holders. We also have a lot of degree holders from the various different graduate schools. And here you can see how the HAA board members break down by the school from which they received their degree. And of course, in some cases, there's duplication as there's folks who have multiple degree holders. Note that there's 1 person on the board with 4 Harvard degrees. Now let's talk about the different roles and how we all got here. So the executive committee is comprised of the president of the HAA, 4 vice presidents, secretary, a treasurer, 2 members at large, and the 4 immediate past presidents of the Harvard Alumni Association board, or the Harvard Alumni Association, also serve on the executive committee. The executive committee's role is to oversee the activities of the board as a whole and provide strategic direction. Our initiative and committee leaders are typically appointed for 1 or 2-year terms, by the executive director of the HAA. And these are typically folks who have already served on the board at least a year or two before they become committee chairs or initiative leaders. Our committee members are appointed ultimately by the executive director of the HAA, often nominated by current board members, HAA staff, or by, for example, Harvard clubs or shared interest groups. College directors are nominated by Harvard and Radcliffe College alumni and class leaders in cooperation with HAA staff, and they are formally appointed to their roles by the executive committee. College directors serve 3-year terms. Elected directors are nominated by the Harvard Alumni Association board, and they are voted on by all Harvard alumni each spring, and they serve 3-year terms. As we mentioned, past president directors are all the living past presidents of the HAA. The graduate school directors are appointed by each respective graduate and professional school. They are approved by the executive committee, and they likewise serve 3-year terms. The clubs and SIGs directors represent the various different Harvard clubs and shared interest groups all over the world. They are nominated by their clubs or SIGs and appointed by the executive committee for a 3-year term. The president of the Harvard Magazine and the chairs of the Harvard College Fund are the ex officio directors on the board. And then lastly, this acronym, the AHCCS&T, the Association of Harvard College Class Secretaries and Treasurers, one of their members serves as a director on the Harvard Alumni Association board as well. This year, the executive committee is led by Susan Morris-Novick, who is our president for the year 2017 to 2018. The first vice president this year is Margaret Wang, and what you need to know about the structure of the executive committee is that this year's first vice president will become next year's president. So in the spring, when the executive committee formation for the following year is announced, you have a year to, the first vice president has a year to prepare for their upcoming presidential term. We have 3 vice presidents. Vanessa Liu this year oversees college affairs, Alice Hill oversees university-wide engagement and marketing, and John Bowman oversees university affairs. Rain Figueroa serves as our secretary, John West as our treasurer, and Dengola Altman and George Yearden as the members at large. Every year, the HAA Executive Committee solicits nominations for the Executive Committee for future years. So we warmly welcome your nominations of people who you think would be a great fit for any of these roles, including of the 4 vice presidents, secretary, treasurer, and members at large. And finally, our 4 most immediate past presidents are Marty Grasso, Paul Choi, Cynthia Torres, and Kate Gellert. And with that, I turn it back to Will to talk about how exactly we accomplish our work on the HAA board.
So in combination of thinking about what does it do, the it in that is really us. And how do we engage as individuals within the structure of the HAA to accomplish meaningful work that has mission and focus. And let's talk a little bit about what it is that we do. Our work is broken into 2 different functions, something that we'll call committees, and you'll become very familiar with this as we continue into our board work, and then initiatives. The first thing that we're going to, initiatives are something that are more strategic, that happen each year. The committee work may be ongoing across time. So what we're going to do now is just drill down a little bit into each of those committees first, and then into the initiatives. So, a quick rundown. You will have seen these on your agenda from the fall and the spring meetings, and this is the type of work that you will engage in the afternoons as you come into the board meeting. The first group is looking at the undergraduate, alumni, and outreach committees, and we'll go step through each of those in a minute. The clubs and shared interest groups. As someone who came out of the graduate school population, I really didn't know what a SIG was, so it's a shared interest group, and we're talking about that, about how those affiliations go across the entire university. The Awards and Scholarships Committee. The nominating committees. You have a sense a little bit about how we bring people forward onto the executive board. Commencement Committee, and then the Schools and Scholarships Committee. Let's step into each one a little bit further. First, the Undergraduate and Alumni Outreach Committees. These are the college alumni programs that are broken into 4 different categories across the generations of the college. So in thinking through, as we call it CAP, but college alumni programs, CAP 1 will bring our college students and alumni up into the 5th reunion program. Second CAP, thinking about that next generation, up to 25th reunion. CAP 3, up to 40th reunion, and then beyond, including the 50th reunion in CAP 4. And what's really nice about this is once you get beyond that 50th point, as we all aspire to, you are automatically in the fold about remaining engaged onward. There are appointed college directors, and there are 4 per life cycle. So this is a very deliberate and intentional way of engagement. We talked about our broader mission of engagement. The college population is very important in terms of that, and we start early, from matriculation until they're no longer around. So let's call it, later on in our lives. The next is the Club and Shared Interest Groups Committees. Now, these are, each year we reframe how these committees work, and there are 3 particular units that we're working on this year. For example, data and discovery, really evaluating who is in the community for each of these clubs and shared interest groups. How are they different or similar? What are the ways that they may cross different populations? So in looking at the data and the structure within each of the college and graduate schools about how can we create things that are, again, deliberate, but also aligning each of those groups together. Fostering university-wide community. Again, thinking about ways in which these clubs and shared interest groups go across the broad university. Thinking about ways in which the mission of each is relevant. And we'll give a couple of examples of this as we go further. And then reimagining our future. Many of these clubs and SIGs have shared interest groups have started a different moment of life. Our culture has evolved. The way we communicate has evolved. Their intention has evolved. So just to give you a small example, on the international clubs, the majority of those are made up of graduate school alumni. That's very different with the U.S. clubs. How can we use those examples between both to continue that engagement and continue to keep our community vibrant? The Awards and Scholarships Committee takes a look at honoring our alumni and also engaging some of our undergraduate students in this very particular Harvard-Cambridge scholarship programs. We are looking, we honor each year in the fall, people have dedicated their volunteer work and have made significant contributions. The Awards and Scholarships Committee evaluates these opportunities. We all have responsibilities as board members to nominate those who we know of and who do successful things. The Harvard-Cambridge Scholarships Program is something that's very in particular that connects students at Harvard with a great opportunity in Cambridge to continue on for additional master's work. The nominating committee looks to bring nominate the overseers and elected directors, that wonderful paper thing that you get in the mail every spring that you need to fill out and send back to us, and hopefully we're going to be engaged in that a little bit differently. But it's a great way to identify people who have served Harvard and served their communities beyond Harvard and can make that contribution. Additionally, the 25th reunion class has the unique distinction of identifying the chief marshal. And this is the way we work through the nominating process for them as well. Now, something you'll hear a lot about is something called happy. It took me a while to realize that's what it is. Everybody is very happy on commencement day. But the responsibility of this group is to really think about how we can truly make our commencement exercises enjoyable, engaging, and a celebration for all that are there. Now, the Happy Committee was extraordinary this past year, especially when it was pouring in over commencement, and we were all smiling. So it's a good thing to do. Each of us will be participating in some of the committee work. Now, the Schools and Scholarship Committee, that's the program that many of you may know of that helps support college admissions for the undergraduates. We will each work on one committee. We are assigned to those committees based on our background and experience. And then within each of those committees, there are subgroups. So, for example, on my shared interest group, enhancing and engaging, we're working on some individual work as well as a sub. Now, for initiatives. Initiatives are identified each year for the Harvard Alumni Association by the executive committee and by the work that's been emerging many times from those committees. Each year, we select a couple or a few initiatives to work on, and let's talk about what they are for this year. Minding the engagement gap. Again, we'll drill down on these in a moment. Organizational problem solving, and volunteer leadership. Now, I know these sound really good to you because they sound really good to us, but we're going to distract your attention from this work because this is the time when the initiatives meet. We are working on our onboarding. So here's an overview of what else is going on the Friday mornings when we're together. First, minding the engagement gap. We take the opportunity to take a half a step back and look at these communities through data. And actually, in our next meeting together, we'll be discussing the Huron study. And this identified for us something that was very important, that for alumni, for women between the ages of 35 and 44, we noted a reduced engagement in comparison to the broad alumni community. This group is working in a very focused way is to explore that, identify those correlations, and think about ways in which we can create opportunities to continue that engagement. Organizational problem solving is a really exciting opportunity this year where we know as a cohort and as you meet your colleagues with us and meet other members on the board, we are problem solvers. I don't think we would be here together if we weren't there. We all have careers that take opportunities for our organizations and think about ways in which we can bring this together. This is an opportunity for us to bring things within our alumni community and our own operations and utilize the knowledge of those that are in the organization itself. So we use the step-back consulting model. People are invited to bring forward ideas that are involved in their communities, either locally or as a club or a shared interest group, and ways in which we can help identify what a potential solution to the challenges that are facing them. It's brand new this year. We had a super kickoff in the fall, and we're looking forward to more identifications of ideas that we can share then back across the entire HAA. And then volunteer leadership, ways in which we can recognize service, provide feedback, and use this opportunity for all of us as professional development engagement. Something that we all value as part of our community is what we each bring, but also, let's not forget, it's a way of how we can be better stewards of HAA and then provide a broader perspective. So with that, and I know it was a quick overview, and as you have other questions about that, we can definitely step into this when we're together at our next meeting. In the future, not this year, you will work on one initiative per year that will get identified. Our first year together, we're on the HAA onBOARD is our initiative, and so as you've gone through your registration for the our meeting, that's what you select. In subsequent years, you'll be able to identify your preference once they're announced in the late spring, and those initiatives do change from year to year. We also want to hear your thoughts about what you think might be appropriate for initiatives. We talked a little bit about this in our overall discussion about what they are, but they are quite deliberate in how we relate to the HAA mission and vision. And it's also a way for us to share our common experiences across a broad array of constituents in our work together. We take the learning from these to share across and inform what we're going to be doing with our committee work, within our directors, and then again, bring it home to what our work is as individual volunteers. The committee work will be in the Friday afternoons of the committee and our initiatives in Friday morning. So after we have our general session in the morning, we'll all connect on Friday morning to continue our onBOARD work this year. And with that, I'm happy to pass over to Barb.
Great, thank you, Will. So this is Barb again, and I am going to spend a few minutes talking about, or rather trying to tackle the question, what is my role? And the members of this board are coming to Cambridge and coming to this organization through a range of backgrounds. But as we come together, we really have to assume this new identity as a board member. And so I'm going to try to kind of talk about some of the strategies that we can use to make that happen. Now, probably one of the first and most important things to keep in mind is that you have a 3-year term. And that is crucial to kind of keep at front of mind kind of all the time, because that's not that long. And it's during this period of time that you really want to maximize your impact. So keeping that in mind, and while you will encounter folks who have had longer terms, the norm is 3 years. Okay, so let's talk about how we can think about maximizing this 3-year experience. First, certainly understanding the structure and function of the HAA will be invaluable to making sure that these 3 years result in meaningful service that's meaningful not just to the HAA but to you personally. And so knowing how things work will help, and that's really one of the major reasons, raison d'etre for onBOARD for this group. Remember that it is a large community, and it can be challenging for new members to discover really how to be effective. And again, the onBOARD, this initiative really was born out of many members articulating this concern that it can be challenging to understand and navigate this community. And therefore, what we're really trying to emphasize is that past board members really are a resource, and those members whose service have found the service to be deeply meaningful for them and who have really been impactful are a great resource as they provide a diverse range of experiences and a wide definition of what a successful term is. So let's talk for a moment about university-wide citizenship and volunteer ambassadorship. So you've been introduced to this concept of a volunteer ambassadorship, and you have been elected or appointed to really serve this function. So what does that mean? So first, it means that you are really a portal of information. So you are going back to your communities, and you'll be in a position, and we're going to encourage you to be really highly informed members of the alumni community to share information about Harvard in your own home communities. And of course, when you come back to these meetings, you're sharing information about your communities and constituents to the HAA. So you are a bi-directional portal of information. We want and expect, and you'll want to attend and participate in both initiative and committee meetings, and of course other board activities. And as you know, it's not just that it's an expectation that you'll participate in 3 of the meetings per year. It really is crucial to making sure that you use these 3 years in the most effective way, and again, that you maximize the impact of the 3-year term attending the meetings. And of course, you'll want to stay informed and communicate regularly with your alumni network. Coming to these meetings is just a superb way of getting that information, really soaking it in, and I think it's the best way possible to be an informed alum and ambassador. And then you're going to want to be a resource for your constituency in terms of identifying new members and building that very important leadership pipeline. All right, so what are the resources for you to be successful and accomplish this? Well we on HAA onBOARD are trying to find ways to make this information easily accessible, and here's where we are now, and we would love input in terms of how we can even make this information more accessible. So there are references. The standard references, the board manual and the board directory. We have an onBOARD website you can see right here. When you come to the board meetings, you'll be receiving packets that are just drenched with information. You can access both the initiative and committee meeting minutes. Of course, Philip provides volunteer updates via email. There's the Harvard Gazette and, of course, Harvard Magazine. By the way, at the end of this deck, we have a couple of things that can be useful. There's a sort of a directory of HAA staff liaison members, and there's also a diagram. It's preceded by a diagram with staff structure, which can be helpful. In terms of folks who want to be resources and are just dying to have you contact us so that we can give you information, there's our onBOARD leadership. There's Siri, and there's Will, there's Daniele, there's Kate, and there's, of course, the HAA staff. Your alumni mentors have identified themselves as individuals who really want to provide assistance and direction, members of the executive committee, committee chairs, initiative leaders, and fellow directors and committee members. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kate Freed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kate Freed, and I'm your staff liaison. I'm the one who sends you all the emails. First of all, I really want to talk about how the HAA staff is here to work in collaboration with you all in helping to engage with your alumni communities. So that's really our main function. But you've received a ton of information and lots of details, so I just want to make a plug for the email I sent you today that has the onBOARD website information. And on there you'll find a bunch of materials, including the board manual, as well as the latest FAQ, which we'll be updating very shortly and sending a new one. And then there are other pieces that we will be able to hand out to you, which is the board directory. If you weren't able to come to the fall meeting, please do make sure you ask someone at the registration desk for a board directory, because they will be able to give you one. That directory really gives you a snapshot of who's on the board, what their functions are, what they've done, and their volunteer experience. And it's just a wealth of information in terms of the HAA board as a whole. So the HAA staff organization is really, and you saw this chart earlier, it's just slightly different. So the HAA staff is made up of 43 different staff members, and we're divided into 8 different departments. But we're not really strictly siloed as that many of our programs require collaboration across the floor, if you will, because we're all on the 6th floor at HAA 124 Mount Auburn Street. So we have alumni education, which involves the travel study program. We have clubs and shared interest groups, engagement marketing, university-wide alumni engagement and events, and volunteer leadership. In addition, we also have the College Alumni Programs Office, which is broken into 3, which is the classes and reunions piece, and they really deal with the reunions aspect of class participation. Then there's also the class reports, which are the quinquennial reports, that's my favorite word, which come out every 5 years, talking about where people have gone the past 5 years and given their life experience. And then the College Alumni Engagement Group. And they really deal with all kinds of engagement for college the college alumni programs as a whole. In addition, there's also school-based alumni relations groups for each different school, and they report locally to their school deans, but also to Tamara Rogers, who is our Vice President of Alumni Affairs and Development. And there's more and more collaboration between the school-based alumni relations groups and the HAA, as we deal very much with the one university concept. So, what does our leadership look like? So we start with our executive director, who is Philip Lovejoy, and if you were able to come to our fall meeting, you were able to meet him. He is always willing and able to discuss if you have any questions, so please feel free to send him an email if you have any. But he then has 4 direct directors under him who help him with the senior leadership of our group. So first we have Rachel Lamson, who runs the volunteer leadership group. And underneath volunteer leadership, that includes the board of directors, as well as the nominating committee and therefore the elected directors of this board. We also are in charge of the afternoon program of commencement, as well as staffing the Happy Committee. Next, we have the Senior Director of University-Wide, which is Sarah Carmone, and she then works with 3 different departments. First is the University-Wide Alumni Engagement and Events, which is led by Heather Gain, and she works very much in partnership with the various school alumni associations across the university on university-wide initiatives, as well as doing most of the faculty outreach for the HAA. Next, we have Engagement Marketing, which is led by Kelly Celia, and she deals with all things digital and social media. They are also involved with nearly all of the HAA communications projects. And finally, under University-Wide Affairs, is the Clubs and Shared Interest Group. I say finally, but really they're our biggest group. Jen Flynn leads this group, and they support over 235 clubs and shared interest groups throughout the world. Supporting the work of clubs and SIGs and a myriad of other programs takes up most of their time. They also will be having the Alumni Leadership Conference, which will be occurring concurrently at this HAA winter meeting. So at the HAA winter meeting in a couple of weeks, you will notice that it's not just HAA board members there. You will also see a number of clubs and SIGs leadership there as well. In addition, regional leadership meetings do periodically happen and have been held in Europe, Latin America, and in Asia. Next is the Senior Director for College Affairs, and that's Kristen Yamichis. And she has those 3 different departments with her, which are College Reunions, which is run by Sienna Lays, the College Alumni Engagement, which is run by Erin Mackey-Kissler, and Class Reports, which is run by Diane McDonald. And then finally, our last director is Charity Bartley, and she runs the Alumni Education, which deals with the traditional HAA travel study programs, but also does all the administration of the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture travel study programs, as well as the Harvard Business School travel program. So who are the staff members that new board members should and would expect to see and come into contact with? Those would be your HAA staff liaisons. Now, this presentation only focuses on the programs and committee liaisons that you as on-board members would come into contact with. So first we're going to deal with the director cohort. Well, no, we're going to talk about HAA onBOARD, and that's me. So any kind of questions that you may have about onBOARD, you have multiple resources. You can come to myself, you can go to any of the HAA onBOARD leaders, or your mentors. And then we have our committee liaisons. So Clubs and SIGs Annual Report, Data and Discovery is led by Chandra Mohammed. Fostering a University-Wide Community is run by Sarah Askey. And Reimagining Our Future is led by Jocelyn Evans. Now, one thing to recognize about staff liaisons is that our work on a day-to-day basis really flows generally into the work that we have with our various groups that we work with. So for example, HAA onBOARD, I work with a volunteer leadership group, therefore I do a lot with board of directors, and therefore my work really kind of works in conjunction with what it is that the HAA onBOARD is doing. So same thing for clubs and shared interest groups. Chandra Mohammed does, she's in charge of the Alumni Magnet, so she's very adept with data, and therefore she is the staff liaison for data and discovery. So that is how staff liaisons work with their committees and/or initiatives. So moving over to the college side, undergraduate and alumni outreach or building community is staffed by John Prince. Strengthening foundations is staffed by Jack Cashman. Broadening engagement is staffed by Sienna Lays. And maintaining connections is staffed by Deb Smullian. Happy Observance of Commencement is staffed by Sarah Graham. And Schools and Scholarships is staffed by Bryce Gafillian. And he is a member of the Harvard College Admissions Office because really the alumni interview process is really run through the admissions office, but given that it's an alumni volunteer experience, it also works in conjunction with the HAA. Next, we have our director cohorts. First, we have Kristen Diamichis, who works with the college directors. Then we have the graduate school directors with Rachel Lamson. Clubs and SIGs directors are with Jen Flynn. And elected directors work with myself.
So we are actually now, we're reaching the end of, this is Barbara again, by the way, we're reaching the end of our HAA onBOARD winter webinar, all meeting recap. And we hope this has been really helpful. We've given you a lot of information and places to find more information. So we hope that this has been useful to you.
And as well, I think as each of you step onto the board and follow your instincts about what you most enjoyed about what got you connected to this HAA experience. And this is just an amazing opportunity to expand that perspective for yourself and meet a whole new bunch of really engaging and fun people. So, and we're there to help guide you through that process.
For those of you who are members of the onBOARD cohort, we want to remind you that this was merely a recap of the fall meeting, and that there's going to be a lot of content to come in the winter and spring meetings during our onBOARD sessions together that will further help you to start charting your course on the board and thinking about how it is that you want to make the best and most meaningful use of your remaining 2 years on the board. For those of our listeners today who are existing board members who are simply taking this course as a refresher, we want to remind you that this is a 45-minute condensation of more than 2 hours worth of content that was delivered at the fall meeting. But we're thrilled that you joined us, and we look forward to all of your feedback about whether this webinar was helpful to you and how we can make it even more productive in the future. Thank you very much for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at the winter meeting in 2 weeks.